The interstellar refugee station floated silently in the void, a glittering city of metal and glass orbiting a dying star. Ships from dozens of species came and went like moths, carrying the desperate, the weary, and the fearful. Most arrived with plans and expectations, but some arrived with nothing. Among those with nothing was a small alien girl, barely 10 cycles old by her species' reckoning. Her skin shimmered with faint iridescence, and her eyes reflected the colors of her long-lost homeworld. She was fragile, tiny, and utterly alone. The station was loud and chaotic. Species of all shapes and sizes shouted at each other in harsh, guttural tones, in soft, melodic hums, and in clicks that sounded almost like laughter. Merchants argued over fuel, food, and passage tickets. Soldiers marched in rigid patterns, their eyes scanning for trouble. Everyone seemed focused on their own survival, leaving little room for anyone else. And in the midst of this confusion, the girl crouched in a corner of the docking bay, clutching a tattered bag that contained the last remnants of her family's possessions. She had arrived alone. Her parents had died in the evacuation of their homeworld, leaving her to drift from ship to ship, seeking shelter. Each time she approached a vessel or a species offering aid, she was turned away. "We have no room," they said. "We cannot afford passengers with no value," others explained. She tried to explain that she was all alone, but words from her tiny, fragile mouth carried no weight. No one listened. No one cared. The girl's species had never been strong or influential. They lacked technology that other civilizations sought, and they had no military might. The galaxy, as it often did, viewed them as insignificant. In the rush to survive, no one thought about compassion or empathy. Survival and only survival mattered. Station authorities had already marked her as non-essential. The automated notices blinked in red above her, repeating the same message over and over. No assistance authorized. Non-essential life form. Evacuation not scheduled. She tried to cry out, but her small voice was swallowed by the roar of engines, shouts, and alarms. The station itself seemed indifferent to her existence. Among the chaos, a human cargo pilot moved through the docking bay, checking his ship and preparing for departure. His name was Elias, and he was relatively new to this part of the galaxy. Humans were considered reckless by most species, too emotional, too willing to take risks that made no logical sense. Their ships were slower than many alien models, and their technology was considered primitive. But humans had something the others often underestimated: stubbornness and a willingness to act against the odds. Elias noticed the girl almost by accident. He had come to the edge of the docking bay to check the cargo hold and nearly stumbled over her. She looked up at him with wide eyes, shimmering like distant stars, and something in her expression stopped him in his tracks. There was fear, yes, but also a faint glimmer of hope. "Are you lost?" he asked softly, crouching down so that he was closer to her level. She didn't respond. She only blinked and hugged her small bag tighter. "Where are your parents?" he asked again gently. The girl shook her head. Her hands trembled and her eyes filled with unshed tears. Elias realized then that she was alone, truly alone, and that realization hit him harder than any calculation or rule ever could. Around him, other species passed without a glance. A pair of armored alien soldiers walked by, their heavy boots echoing through the bay. A group of merchants argued over fuel quotas, completely ignoring the small figure at the edge of the bay. Even station authorities, who monitored every corner of the station, paid her no attention. She was invisible. Elias knew that helping her would be against the rules. The station had strict protocols for non-essential life forms, and anyone who interfered risked fines, loss of docking privileges, or worse. Other humans might have ignored her, worried about their own ships and schedules. But Elias could not. Something about the girl's helplessness reached deep into him, igniting a need to act. He stepped closer. "Come on," he said, extending a hand. "We're going to get you out of here." "I've got you." The other species that saw them only shook their heads. "Humans are reckless," one muttered. "Why risk anything for a non-essential life form?" another snorted. "It won't last. That little one will die if left alone, and you'll regret wasting your time." He could not leave her behind, not when she had nowhere else to go. Reaching his ship, Elias unlocked the cargo bay and helped the girl inside. She looked around in awe. The human vessel was smaller than many of the ships docked at the station, but it was clean and functional. Panels blinked with lights, engines hummed softly, and the smell of metal and fuel filled the air. It was not luxurious, but it was safe. "Sit here," he said, pointing to a small padded corner. "It's safe for now." Ships were leaving, alarms were blaring, and the galaxy seemed intent on leaving her behind. Everyone else had abandoned her, but not the human. Elias refused to see her as anything less than valuable. As the ship detached from the docking bay and began its journey into the void, Elias glanced at the girl. "We're going to be okay," he said softly. "I promise you, no one is leaving you behind anymore." The galaxy was a dangerous place, full of pirates, patrols, and unfeeling bureaucracies. A lone human and a small alien girl would face countless obstacles. But for the first time, someone believed in her. And that belief was powerful, stronger than any technology, stronger than any weapon, stronger than the fear that had ruled her life for so long. Elias set the ship on a steady course, navigating through asteroid fields and debris. He taught the girl small things along the way, how to use the communication panels, how to read basic star maps, how to stay calm when alarms sounded. She learned quickly, her eyes wide with curiosity and wonder. Humans had a strange way of teaching, patient, kind, and persistent. And slowly she began to trust not only Elias but the possibility of survival itself. Days passed in the cramped ship. Food rations were shared, stories were exchanged, and a bond began to form. The girl, who had once been invisible to the galaxy, now had someone who cared. She learned to smile, to ask questions, to react to simple kindness. Elias marveled at her resilience. Despite everything, she had survived. Despite the abandonment and cruelty of countless species, she had endured. But danger was never far away. The station authorities had already marked Elias' ship as unauthorized for carrying a non-essential life form. Patrols scanned the sector and warnings were sent to all vessels. Pirates, sensing a vulnerable ship, might strike at any moment. Elias knew the galaxy would not forgive his compassion easily, but he also knew that abandoning the girl was never an option. One evening, as the stars streaked past the ship's windows, the girl spoke for the first time. Her voice was small and uncertain, but it carried a strength that surprised Elias. "Why, did you help me?" she asked, her eyes shimmering like her homeworld's oceans. Elias looked at her, his expression serious but gentle. "Because you matter," he said simply. "No one else here thought so, but I do. That's enough reason." For the first time, the girl allowed herself to hope. She allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could survive. Maybe she could belong. Maybe someone in the galaxy would not abandon her. And for Elias, the journey was only beginning. The galaxy might see humans as reckless, emotional, and inefficient, but he knew a truth that others had not yet learned. Sometimes, the smallest act of compassion could change everything. As the ship sailed deeper into uncharted space, carrying two unlikely passengers, the stars stretched endlessly before them. The human and the alien girl faced an uncertain future, full of danger, mystery, and the cold, indifferent universe. But for the first time, someone had refused to leave the helpless behind. And that refusal, that simple act of humanity, would be the spark that changed everything. The human ship drifted through empty space, its engines humming softly, a lone bubble of life in the cold void. The alien girl sat quietly in the padded corner, her eyes tracing the patterns of lights on the control panels. She had begun to learn human words, but speech still came slowly, as if each syllable was being carefully chosen. She didn't speak often, but when she did, her voice carried a cautious strength. Elias watched her from the cockpit, smiling softly. He had never imagined he would grow attached to someone so fragile, but something about her resilience and curiosity had already captured his respect. The galaxy outside was not kind. Patrol ships scanned the sector for unauthorized vessels, and rumors of pirate activity traveled faster than any human could calculate. Elias knew that carrying the alien girl put them both at risk. Other species viewed humans as weak, but Elias understood that weakness could be a mask. He had survived situations that others thought impossible, not through raw strength, but through careful observation, patience, and an unwavering refusal to leave anyone behind. And now, for the first time, he had someone depending entirely on him. He glanced at the girl. "We need to find a safe system," he said. "Somewhere they won't track us." Trust was rare in her life, and she felt the warmth of it now, even in the cold metal shell of the ship. Days passed with careful navigation through asteroid fields and debris clusters. Elias taught the girl how to monitor the ship's sensors and interpret the flashing lights. She learned quickly, her mind absorbing patterns and logic as if it were a game. But as her understanding grew, so did the galaxy's attention. A warning appeared on the screen. Patrol ships from the sector authority had detected them. "Human vessel," the automated voice warned. "Unauthorized transport of non-essential life form. Stop immediately for inspection." "We're not stopping," Elias knew they could not outrun them in a straight chase. The alien engines were faster, and humans had always relied on clever thinking rather than speed. He calculated angles, potential debris fields, and gravitational pulls. With a deep breath, he adjusted the ship's trajectory, weaving between fragments of asteroids. The patrol ships followed, but each maneuver forced them to slow down. The girl gasped as rocks passed just outside the viewport. "Fast," she said. Elias chuckled. "Hold on," he said, and the ship jerked around a spinning debris cluster, narrowly avoiding collision. The patrols fell behind, forced to adjust their paths, and finally, after tense minutes that felt like hours, they gave up the chase. The girl's relief was visible. She slumped against the padded wall, eyes wide, glowing faintly with emotion. Elias let her rest, knowing that fear could be as exhausting as battle. "You did well," he said. "You stayed calm." Even after escaping the patrols, pirates spotted the small ship drifting alone. A warning signal appeared, a jagged red light blinking on the control panel. Elias cursed under his breath. Pirates were ruthless, preying on the weak and unprotected. They wanted cargo, not life, and a human vessel with a small alien girl seemed the perfect target. "They want to stop us," the girl said, her small voice trembling. Elias nodded. "Yes, but we're not going to let them, trust me." He would not abandon her, no matter the cost. The pirate ship fired, and lasers streaked across space. The human ship shook as the beams grazed the hull. Elias maneuvered with precision, dodging and weaving, using debris fields as cover. The girl held on tightly, her small hands gripping the edge of her seat. Fear mixed with exhilaration, and for the first time she felt alive in a way she never had before. Hours passed in tense combat. Elias used every trick he knew, altering the ship's course unpredictably, using gravity wells to slow pursuers, even faking systems failures to confuse the pirates. By the end, the pirate ship retreated, unable to match the humans' unconventional tactics. The girl exhaled, glowing faintly with nervous energy. "You never stop?" she asked. "No," Elias said, "not when someone depends on me." She had been abandoned, ignored, and left to die countless times, yet here was someone who refused to leave her. Someone who acted without expecting reward only because it mattered. Over the next few days, the girl began to change. Subtle things first. Her movements became more confident, her reactions quicker. She began mimicking Elias' speech patterns and problem-solving methods. It was astonishing. Humans, she realized, were not merely physical beings. They carried resilience, creativity, and the ability to inspire others. And the more time she spent with Elias, the more she felt that spark inside herself. Elias noticed the changes, too. He could see her learning faster than normal, understanding concepts that most of her species would take cycles to grasp. Her bioluminescent skin flickered with new patterns, something he did not fully understand but which seemed connected to her growing awareness. "They say your species is weak," he said one night as the stars streaked past their viewports. "But I think they're wrong. You're learning faster than I expected." "Why help me?" she asked again, still trying to understand. "Because," Elias said slowly, choosing his words carefully, "no one deserves to be left behind, not ever." Where other species calculated value, humans saw potential. They saw worth in others simply because they existed. But the galaxy was not forgiving. Reports of a rogue human ship carrying a non-essential alien reached other authorities. Interstellar patrols began actively tracking them. Elias knew that sooner or later they would be forced to confront the full power of the galaxy's bureaucracy. The girl began to sense this tension too. She noticed the way Elias checked the sensors, the way he planned escape routes, and the quiet determination in his voice. Fear still existed, but it was mixed with trust, with hope, and with growing confidence in her own abilities. One day, while monitoring the ship's systems, she discovered a pattern. The sensors were picking up subtle fluctuations in energy fields, signs of other ships, even those trying to hide. She called Elias over, her small hands pointing at the screens. "See here," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "We can know. You just figured out how to detect cloaked ships." Human compassion had given her a chance, and she was seizing it, but danger loomed closer than ever. A massive patrol vessel appeared on the sensors, faster and more heavily armed than anything Elias had faced before. There was no time to escape through the asteroid fields. They would have to face it head-on. Elias prepared for the worst. "Stay calm," he said. "We may have to fight. But remember, we survive first, fighting only if needed." The patrol ship fired, but Elias' unconventional maneuvers, combined with the girls' newly learned strategies, allowed them to evade the worst of the attack. Small, precise countermeasures bought them time. The patrols were forced to retreat, baffled by the human-alien duo. After the battle, the girl slumped in her seat, exhausted but exhilarated. "We survive," she said, her voice faint but strong. "Yes," Elias replied. "Together we survive, and one day the galaxy will learn what that means." She was learning, adapting, and growing in ways that no one had predicted. And as the ship sailed onward, past dying stars and drifting comets, Elias knew that the galaxy had only begun to understand the consequences of human compassion. A small act of kindness had created something unstoppable, a spark that could change the course of entire civilizations. The human and the alien girl had survived the station's abandonment, evaded patrols, outsmarted pirates, and discovered new abilities together. But the journey was far from over. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and full of challenges that no one could foresee. Yet Elias did not fear. With the girl by his side, he felt unstoppable. Because for the first time, he had proven that humans did not abandon those who could not defend themselves. And that simple, stubborn determination was a force more powerful than anyone had realized. The stars stretched endlessly around them, each one a distant sun in the vast emptiness of space. Elias' ship glided through the void, carrying both him and the alien girl who had once been abandoned, feared, and dismissed. But now she was no longer helpless. Over the past cycles, she had grown in ways that even Elias could not have imagined. Her mind was sharper, her instincts keener, and her trust in him had transformed into something extraordinary, an unspoken understanding of strategy, logic, and survival. Elias glanced at her, seated quietly in the corner of the cockpit, her glowing eyes reflecting the distant lights of the stars. She had become a partner, not a passenger, and the bond between them was unbreakable. They had survived patrols, pirates, and the dangers of the galaxy together. Yet, Elias knew the most difficult test was still ahead. The galaxy did not forgive deviation. They would eventually be tracked by authorities who saw the girl as nothing more than a non-essential life form and the human as reckless, a violator of every interstellar regulation. It was during a routine scan that the warning appeared. The message was blunt, urgent, and unyielding. Sector Authority Patrol, unauthorized human vessel, immediate inspection required, non-essential life form detected. Elias' hands tightened around the controls. He had anticipated this. There was no way to outrun an entire patrol fleet without drawing their attention. And yet he refused to consider abandoning the girl. She had survived this far because someone believed in her. He would not betray that trust. The girl noticed the tension in his movements. "Elias, danger?" she asked softly, her glowing skin flickering with a mixture of fear and determination. "Yes," he replied, his voice calm but firm. "They are coming for us, but we are not alone. You know more than you think. Trust yourself, trust me." The ship shuddered as it accelerated, weaving through a dense asteroid belt. The patrol fleet followed, massive ships bristling with weapons. Most species would have fled, abandoning their cargo and passengers. Most would have surrendered. Elias, however, knew that human stubbornness and ingenuity could outmatch sheer force, especially when paired with an unexpected ally. "Prepare evasive maneuvers," he said, "and watch the patterns. She can help." "Left," she said, pointing at the navigation panel. "Now." The ship twisted through the asteroid belt with precision, leaving the pursuing patrols scrambling to keep up. Minutes felt like hours. The tension was suffocating, but the girl's calm presence grounded Elias. Her trust in him, combined with her rapidly evolving abilities, gave him the edge he needed. Together, they outmaneuvered the fleet, slipping through gaps that no one had thought possible. Once they cleared the immediate danger, Elias allowed himself a moment of relief. The girl turned to him, her eyes wide, pulsing softly with light. "We survive?" she asked, almost in disbelief. "Yes," he said, smiling, "because we refuse to give up on each other." They saw humans as emotional, reckless, inefficient, but Elias embodied something far greater. He had shown that compassion, determination, and courage were forms of strength that could not be measured in technology or firepower. In the quiet that followed, the girl began to speak more clearly. Her words came easier now, shaped by cycles of practice and observation. "You care," she said. "Even when others know." Human presence had triggered a latent ability in her species. Compassion had been the catalyst. By being treated as someone worth saving, her mind had unlocked skills that her kind had never demonstrated before. She could analyze, predict, and react with extraordinary speed, an ability no patrol, pirate, or bureaucratic authority had anticipated. The next weeks passed in tense navigation through uncharted space. The girl's abilities grew stronger. She learned to anticipate cosmic phenomena, detect hidden threats, and optimize the ship's performance beyond human understanding. Each challenge they faced, meteor storms, rogue drones, and unstable gravity fields, became opportunities for her to apply her emerging talents. Elias watched her with pride. "You've become remarkable," he said one evening, gazing at her glowing eyes. "I think the galaxy hasn't seen the likes of you yet." They had tracked them relentlessly, refusing to be deceived by human ingenuity. They demanded surrender, threatening annihilation if Elias did not comply. The girl turned to him. "We cannot hide. We show them what they didn't expect." The patrol fleet faltered, struggling to anticipate the combined strategy of a human and an alien girl who had been written off as weak. Aboard the largest patrol ship, the commanders watched in disbelief. How is this possible?" one exclaimed. "A human alone should not survive. And that alien, it's learning, adapting, reacting impossibly fast." As the fleet retreated, unwilling to risk further engagement, Elias exhaled. "We did it," he said, the weight of exhaustion evident in his voice. The girl looked at him, her expression filled with awe and understanding. "Because you stayed," she said softly. "Yes," he replied, "and because you trusted yourself, you are stronger than anyone expected." Reports circulated of the human vessel that defied patrols, carrying a non-essential alien who had transformed under human care. Aliens whispered in shock, and humans, previously dismissed as reckless and weak, were finally recognized for something deeper. The galaxy began to realize that compassion, courage, and refusal to abandon others could be more powerful than technology, more influential than armies, and more enduring than fear. The girl now understood her own potential. She could see beyond survival. She could see strategy, diplomacy, and the ripple effect of human empathy. She had become an example of what could happen when someone was treated as valuable, even when the galaxy said otherwise. Elias and the girl continued their journey, traveling through uncharted systems and discovering new civilizations. Where other humans might have seen obstacles, he saw opportunities to help, to protect, and to uplift. The girl had learned to see the same. Together they became a symbol, that no one should ever be abandoned, and that humans, unpredictable, emotional, and stubborn, could change the fate of an entire galaxy. Their legend began to grow. Stories spread of the human who refused to leave a helpless alien girl behind, and the girl who had awakened incredible abilities under the guidance of compassion. Species began to reconsider their own values, questioning the rigid rules that had once dictated life and death. The galaxy had underestimated humans, as it always did, but now humans had shown that even the smallest act of empathy could ignite a force stronger than any weapon. As they sailed through the stars, the girl turned to Elias. "We make difference?" she asked. "Yes," he said firmly. "We already have, and will keep going. No one else has to be abandoned if we can help." Together, they proved that the power of refusing to abandon someone could alter the course of civilizations, awaken hidden potential, and remind the galaxy of a truth long forgotten. Life mattered, and those who believed in it could create miracles. The stars stretched endlessly before them, but neither Elias nor the girl felt small. They had survived abandonment, defied patrols, and discovered the true strength of empathy and partnership. And as the galaxy watched in awe, one lesson became clear. Humans were not weak, and compassion was not powerless. In the emptiness of space, the spark of humanity burned brighter than any star, and it would continue to light the way for those who had been forgotten.